You're standing in your kitchen. It's 7 a.m., coffee in hand. You're telling your dog about the presentation you're nervous about today. You ask your cat what they think you should wear. You apologize to your parrot for being late with breakfast. Maybe you've been told it's silly, that they don't understand, that you're being childish. But what if I told you this habit reveals something extraordinary about how your brain works? Something you might feel embarrassed about. Something scientists are only now beginning to understand. There's a reason 97% of pet owners talk to their animals. It has nothing to do with loneliness or naivety. By the end of this video, you'll see why people who talk to their pets are doing something unusual. Something that reflects emotional intelligence at a very high level. If you're still here, there's a good chance this video is touching something familiar, something you've experienced yourself. If that's the case, you can let me know by giving this video a like or subscribing to the channel. It helps more than you might think. Let me take you inside a moment. You come home after a brutal day. Your boss criticized your work in front of everyone. You feel a tightness in your chest, a heat behind your eyes. You walk through the door, and there's your dog, tail wagging, and without thinking, you sit down on the floor. You say, "You wouldn't believe what happened today. Sarah took credit for my entire project, the one I stayed up until 2 a.m. working on. And when I tried to say something, everyone just stared at me, like I was the problem." Your dog tilts their head. Their ears perk up. They move closer. They rest their chin on your knee. And something shifts inside you. Now here's what's fascinating. Research from the University of Chicago shows that when you talk to your pet, activity increases in brain regions linked to social understanding and emotional processing. Your brain is working harder, not because you're confused, but because you're doing something complex. You're not really talking to your dog. You're using your dog as a mirror, a way to talk to yourself. Here's what researchers found. When scientists studied people who regularly talk to their pets, they noticed something unexpected. These people scored higher on measures of emotional intelligence, not slightly, noticeably. They showed stronger perspective taking, more imagination, more emotional depth, more cognitive flexibility. In simple terms, their minds were better at moving between viewpoints. Let's break down what's happening. First, perspective taking. When you say things like, "She's annoyed," "He's sulking," "They're judging me," you're not being random. People who use human-like language with pets tend to notice subtle emotional signals in others as well. The same mental ability that lets you imagine what your cat might be feeling helps you sense when a colleague isn't okay, even when they say they are. Second, emotional articulation. Every time you explain your feelings to your pet, you're organizing them. Psychologists call this externalization. It means taking what feels chaotic inside and turning it into words. Talking to a dog or a cat helps release tension. It helps emotions move instead of staying stuck. Think about it. How often do you say out loud, "I feel overwhelmed. I feel scared"? With people, we edit ourselves. We soften the story. We protect our image. With your pet, you usually don't. You tell the truth, raw, unfiltered. Here's where it gets more interesting. When you talk to your pet, you're not just speaking. You're watching. You notice small changes, an ear twitch, a shift in posture, a change in breathing. You adjust your tone. You slow down. You soften your voice. Most people don't realize they're doing this, but they are. People who regularly talk to animals practice reading nonverbal signals every day. Not through words, through presence. And over time, this becomes automatic. That skill doesn't stay with animals. It transfers. These are often the people who walk into a room and sense tension before anyone speaks. They notice when a smile doesn't reach the eyes, when a voice sounds steady, but the body says otherwise. They understand that "I'm fine" doesn't always mean fine. It sometimes means "please ask again." And they hear it. Not because they're guessing, but because they've trained their attention in a quieter place. Let's talk about what this habit is building over time. Not in theory, but in you. First, empathy. When you spend years communicating with a being that doesn't use words, you stop relying on language alone. You learn to notice shifts in posture, in energy, in silence. This is why people who talk to their pets often sense emotional changes in others early. Before anyone explains, before anyone admits anything. They don't push, they don't interrogate. They wait, they observe. And they understand that emotions don't always announce themselves. Second, emotional regulation. Talking to your pet slows you down. You speak out loud. You hear your own thoughts. You give them shape. Your pet doesn't interrupt. They don't correct you. They don't minimize what you feel. They just stay. And that matters more than advice. Over time, this becomes a pattern. You learn how to sit with emotion without trying to fix it immediately. You learn that calm doesn't come from solutions. It comes from presence. And that skill follows you into the rest of your life. Into conversations. Into conflict. Into moments where others rush, and you don't. If any of this feels familiar, you're not alone. If you have thoughts about this, or you recognize yourself somewhere in these moments, feel free to share them in the comments. And if you know someone who might relate to this video, someone who lives with a pet or talks to them the same way, consider sharing it with them. Sometimes a video like this isn't about learning something new. It's about feeling understood. Research helps clarify this. People who talk to their pets more often aren't always avoiding others. In many cases, they're managing isolation, especially people who live alone. Older adults, people going through long periods of stress. Pets become a form of interaction, not a replacement, a buffer. They offer routine, responsiveness, a sense of being noticed. Studies show that people living alone often talk to their pets more frequently. Not because they lack social ability, but because they still have social needs. A pet allows those needs to be expressed safely, without performance, without expectation. This is especially visible in older adults. Those who view their pets as active companions often report lower levels of depression. They feel more engaged, more grounded. But here's the important distinction. These people aren't disconnected. Their social awareness is often intact, sometimes heightened. They're not choosing silence because they can't connect. They're choosing a quieter form of connection because it asks less of them. That's not withdrawal. That's regulation. And in many cases, it's a form of care. From the outside, this habit can look strange. Some people assume you're treating an animal like a person, that you've lost perspective, that you're confused about what your pet really is. But that's not what's happening. You know your pet isn't human. You know they don't understand every word. You know they aren't giving advice. What others miss is the function of the behavior. You're not pretending. You're using the relationship to access parts of yourself that don't come out easily with people. Talking to a pet creates space. Space to think out loud. Space to notice what you're feeling. Space to hear yourself without interruption. There's no pressure to respond well. No pressure to explain clearly. No pressure to be understood immediately. That freedom matters. It allows honesty without consequence. So when someone sees you talking to your pet and assumes confusion, they're missing the point. This isn't about imagination gone too far. It's about using a quiet relationship to regulate a noisy inner world. Here's another way to look at it. When you talk to your pet, you're not waiting for answers. You're creating space. Space to hear your own thoughts without interruption. When you tell your pet about your day, You're not asking for advice. You're allowing yourself to process out loud. When you apologize to your pet for being impatient or distracted, you're not worried about their reaction. You're practicing accountability in the safest possible context. When you ask your pet what you should do, you're not expecting guidance. You're giving your intuition room to speak. This is how people learn to trust themselves. Not through certainty, but through repetition. Through hearing their own voice and recognizing it as valid. Over time, this builds clarity. You start noticing what feels right, what doesn't. Not because someone told you, but because you've learned to listen. Here's the larger pattern behind all of this. Humans are meaning-making creatures. We don't just react, we interpret. We look for connection, for coherence, for something that makes our experiences feel real. Talking to a pet fits into that pattern. Not because the pet responds with words, but because the interaction feels grounded. There's a presence there, a rhythm, a shared moment. For some people, this is easier than speaking to another person. Not because it's less meaningful, but because it's less demanding. There's no expectation to be impressive, no need to perform clarity. You can be unfinished. You can be uncertain, and still be heard. This is why the habit feels natural. It aligns with how the human mind works. We think best when we feel safe enough to speak without editing. And sometimes, that safety comes from a being that doesn't ask for explanations. Think about moments like these. You're anxious about something. Your thoughts keep looping. So you sit down and start explaining the problem to your pet. You talk it through, step by step. Halfway in, you hear yourself. You realize what's actually bothering you, or what you've been avoiding, or what you already know needs to happen. The pet didn't solve anything, but speaking out loud created clarity. Another moment. You're heartbroken, and you've already told the story too many times. Friends are tired. Family thinks you should be past it by now. But your pet stays. You tell the story again, not to get advice, not to move on faster, just to be with it. And your pet doesn't rush you. They don't set a timeline. They don't ask when you'll be done grieving. They just stay close. And sometimes, that's enough. Another moment. You're excited about something small, too small to explain. So you tell your pet. You describe it anyway. Every detail. And somehow, being heard, even without words, makes the moment feel real. This is what all of this points to. Talking to your pet isn't about confusion. It's about connection. Not the loud kind, not the performative kind, but the quiet kind that allows you to stay with yourself. People who talk to their pets often understand something early. That being heard doesn't always require a response. That clarity doesn't always come from conversation. Sometimes it comes from saying things out loud, in a space where nothing is demanded back. This habit isn't random. It reflects a capacity to slow down, to notice, to stay present with emotion, without trying to escape it. That skill doesn't stay here. It carries into relationships, into conflict, into moments where others rush to speak, and you choose to listen. What looks unusual on the surface is often a sign of something deeper, an ability to create safety from the inside out. So if someone ever raises an eyebrow when they catch you talking to your pet, this is what they're missing. You're not confused about what your pet is. You're not lonely in a way that needs fixing. You're not being childish. You're someone who understands that connection doesn't always require words. That being witnessed can matter more than being answered. That some of the most important conversations happen when only one voice is heard. People who talk to their pets often carry a quiet kind of awareness. They notice emotional shifts. They sense what goes unspoken. And they've found a way to stay connected to themselves without turning everything into performance. This isn't about escaping reality. It's about staying human in a world that rarely slows down. So keep having those conversations. Keep speaking out loud when you need to. You're not talking to your pet because they understand every word. You're talking because you do. And sometimes, that's enough. If this video stayed with you, even quietly, you can support the channel by liking or subscribing. And if someone came to mind while you were listening, feel free to share this video with them. Sometimes content like this isn't meant to go viral. It's meant to find the right people.